There's a part of me that just laughs at the humor of it all because it's so obvious. We're in this shadowy fun dance of like, hey, this is the part of your shit that you don't want to look at. And you're like, that's not just my shit. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it's just yours because I can see it really clearly. And you're like, tell me about it. I can see it super clear. It's happening right now all the time.
Describe
and I'm like,
it to me.
I'm pretty sure this one's just yours, babe. And you're like, okay, because I'm pretty sure this one's just yours. And I'm like, no, that one's yours. It's the same fucking thing. It's what you were saying earlier, where it kind of always comes back to we're feeling the same things, right? You and I have a lot of similar wounds, but I don't think it's just you and I. I think that shame and guilt and judgment, and these are big things that people have had to kind of deal with and unpack and sit with.
We'll make it out and fall in love tonight. Ain't nothing needed but
Try not to. We're starting now. Okay.
Do you remember what we're talking about?
Yes.
What is it today?
We are talking about judgment today.
Dun, dun, dun. Judgment Day. Terminator 2. Do you remember when Judgment Day was?
No.
I watched
I
that movie
don't.
so many times when T2
Yeah.
came out. It was like
It's
prime
in
Craig
September,
time.
isn't it?
I don't think so. It's in
Oh, you don't know?
1999, I think.
1999?
Yeah.
Prince
Here.
had it. We're going to party.
Party like it's
Like it's
1999.
Did you ever rock out to that song in 1999?
No.
You did?
I wasn't. We had this recently where we were talking about Prince, and neither one of us were really big Prince fans. Sorry if you're a big Prince fan,
Yeah.
but we are not.
But
unfortunately.
I really rock, like party like it's 1999. 1999 felt like it hit different also because, as we've mentioned, I grew up on a military base. And for those of you that are old enough to have memory of the great switch to the 2000, the Y2K, and all of the propaganda of the computers aren't going to be able to keep up.
The
and
propaganda.
The airplanes are going to fall out of the sky and all of that coming through. So 1999
No,
hit
it's
a little
August,
harder.
August 29th, 1997 is Judgment Day.
1997, August
Yeah.
29th?
Yeah.
I was close.
We survived.
We did. We made it through. 1997 is when
Yeah.
all of this was
Fast
supposed
forward,
to
what
hit.
would that be? 30 years? 97, 2007, 2007. Yeah, fast forward to 37. Maybe it's 2027
Okay.
when Skynet finally comes online.
Ooh.
Bum, bum, bum.
Dun,
That's
dun,
not what this
dun.
episode is about, by the way. We're not talking about Judgment Day from that perspective.
This
We're not
is a
even talking
recap
about
of the
Judgment Day.
Terminators.
The Terminators. We're going to start at the beginning and go through all 16 Terminator movies that there have been. No. Oh my goodness, I got a scratchy throat.
I'm going to scratch your throat. It's all right. So one of the things that came up is how judgment judgment shows up. We all have judgment that comes through us. And a lot of times we get mixed between judgment and discernment. So we have healthy discernment. We can understand when things aren't good for us. And we have judgment of where we're ridiculing, we're placing.
Criticism. Yeah, so we've realized recently, and truthfully, it's not even realizing recently. It's something that we have been super aware of for quite some time, but it's one of those like slippery things that if you're not consciously always thinking about it, then you forget, right? And
Or
so
you think it doesn't apply to you.
that is definitely
Not
the
this
case for
time.
some of us, right?
That was, yeah.
Yeah, we've got some funny stories to share. So the whole idea is everything that you are judging and criticizing externally, meaning the world around you, the people around you, the other people that you're in relationship with, every external judgment or criticism is a reflection of something about yourself. Now it's slippery because it's not every judgment or criticism, right? You brought up discernment just a second ago, and it's really important that we talk about that too, and I think we're going to get into it, where the difference between being able to discern, like, there are things that need to be judged. There are things that you should be critical of in your life. And there's also the flip side of it where all of those things that you would judge or criticize oftentimes are a reflection of you. It's just really simple like that. And we recognize it in our relationship all the time, right? What are some examples that you can think of, babe, where it shows up in our relationship? We'll get to like the fun one that we had recently. But I mean, I do it for you. I do it all the time with you, where you'll be doing something. And in my head, I will be sitting there judging you. I'll be like, seriously? Are you doing that again? And then if I really get curious and if I really stop and look and reflect and explore and sit with it, it's behavior that I'm guilty of.
Yeah.
Like every single time. And I'm trying to come up with one right now. I should have had a couple in my back pocket, but
Right.
I can't think of any right off the top of my head.
I don't have one specifically, but one like a scenario that comes up that we experience and we get to like bring light on into our relationship a lot is if you're feeling a certain way, there's a good chance I am. And if I'm feeling a certain way, there's a good chance you are. And it's not in a, oh, we feel the same things and we're always on the same. It's not that. It's just like this. If I'm feeling judged, if I'm feeling criticized, if I'm feeling ignored, if I'm feeling pushed aside, and I like have this resentment coming up that I'm projecting at you, chances are you're feeling the same. And that used to be a sticky one for me. I was like, oh, sure, way to scoot responsibility. Like, I can't be feeling that way because you are, or like, this whole dynamic of it. And that one was really hard because it felt like it was so invalidating my feelings. And I was slow to that. And I think you brought that first. There's a good chance, if you're feeling it, I'm feeling it. And it started to really solidify. And I saw the way that it was playing out when you would get to go first with your emotions. And like when okay, let me try and back this up.
Maybe we can slow this down a little bit because this is a really important thing, I think, that happens in our relationship all the time, where we will be in the midst of processing something. And it's always surface level stuff initially, right? Where we're having an argument or a fight about something. It doesn't really matter what. Enter in any number of things that we fight about on a regular basis, or that we disagree about, or that we argue about, or that causes conflict, right? Maybe conflict in our relationship is a better way than, say, fighting, because fighting can be misinterpreted in so many different ways. Like we're not actively, fighting each other in any way. It's just a disagreement and a conflict.
Really like blow up at each other. We don't even we don't have like these like throw down arguments.
Sometimes.
They've happened.
Yeah, sometimes.
Thankfully I'm really calm and patient in this relationship, so we don't.
But what we find is that when we really start to slow down and talk through things, oftentimes we're having some of these real base emotional responses where we're both feeling like we'll both feel invalidated at times. We'll both feel unloved. We'll both feel unheard. We'll both feel scared. We'll both have these real basic core need feelings that are down at the root of everything. And then we come up from that, and that's where it's all the coping mechanisms and all the behaviors and all the things that we're doing to protect that little tiny part of us that is feeling sad, scared, alone, right, unloved. And that's what you're talking about is a lot of times that's exactly what's happening is we're feeling the exact same thing. And then it's like, how do we wade through each other's coping mechanisms to recognize that?
Yeah. And to
that's what you were talking about, right?
It is to a point, but to just to try and clarify it just a little bit more, at least how it makes sense in my brain. There were times I would and I'm just going to say my experiences, you get to share yours. Like I would communicate in a really healthy way. I would be reactive and be like, I'm hurt. I'm feeling like you're not listening to me. I'm feeling unheard. I'm feeling unimportant, like these things. And then you would communicate back. Because we also, it's a dance, right? We learn how to listen, to hear the other person. We're not perfect. So sometimes you were feeling that so strong. And we have this thing of whoever gets triggered first goes first. It's not always clear. Sometimes I think I'm triggered first and it was actually started with you. And I responded to your trigger and vice versa. But there had been times that I'm like, this is how I'm feeling and I'm owning my feeling. And you communicate you're feeling the same. And I couldn't hear it because I'm like, no, you don't get to flip this. This is how I'm feeling. And that's how my brain could see it. So not only was I feeling this way, now I'm like, now you're taking, very judgy, very picking at. And then what started to is when we started to really practice when the other person gets to go first, we're listening. When your partner is communicating with you how they are feeling, it's your job to listen, not defend, not deflect, not not me, you, put it back. Hear them And so when that started happening, we're listening to each other and hearing you, and you were telling me how you were feeling. And it was like you were, and I've said this recently even, it's like it feels like you were saying my feelings verbatim. Like I gave you a script to say how I'm feeling. And that's how you were describing that you were feeling. So it started to make a lot of sense then. Like I'm feeling this reaction. You're feeling this reaction. We're ping-ponging. And it's not, I understand, it's not always that. We're not saying that this is 100% what it always is. But this is how it's showing up in our relationship, that judgment. And when I'm pointing my fingers at you and seeing something that you're doing, it's a reflection of my behaviors, that mirror. When I'm feeling hurt, it's a reflection of how you are feeling.
You know, a good example I just thought of?
I would love one because I feel like I can't quite get it out.
You'll shut down emotionally. Okay. You'll be trying to navigate and process through something. And then one of your coping mechanisms is dissociation.
Yes.
Okay. And when that happens, not all the time, but when that happens, I will judge that.
Okay.
Where I will look at that and I'll be like, baby, come on. Like in my head, the narrative is like, you got to stay in this moment and feel it. Like you have to, not just like, oh, you know, stay in the suck of it all and feel all the pain of it. But it's like, you have to feel it. Like you have to process this. Like you can't just dissociate and leave. You have to stay in the moment and process it. 2 seconds later, I'll do the exact same thing. 2 seconds later, I'll get triggered or activated, right? And immediately I'll just check out. Always. Not always, right? Again, we're doing so much better than we ever have before in our lives when it comes to all of this stuff. However, it's easy for me to see the things that you're doing when it comes to all of the stuff that we're talking about because you're the mirror for me.
Yeah.
And when I can see the things that you're doing on your little path of healing and navigating your life, right? They're a direct reflection of the things that I need to work on. So when I see you struggle and when you dissociate and when you avoid looking at certain things, I don't need to sit there and criticize and judge you. I don't need to think like, come on, Steph, we got to hurry up and get this healing done so that we can live this happy, full life free of pain and suffering. It's, oh, I need to work on that more.
Right.
I need to sit in these things more. I need to process things more. So that's an example that I can think of, at least right now. I know that there's more, right? I'm sure more will come to us, but it's so clear sometimes where, because we talk about that all the time, the whole mirroring effect in relationships and with people and everything like that. And that's how it's showing up for me right now, where I can see, like I said, very clearly, if I can sit back on my nice little high horse and point out all the things that you're doing wrong, those are just things that I myself need to work on. Yeah. And I think it's applicable. Like we did this we had this piece of content that a lot of people had some thoughts on. And it was about, it stemmed from, my therapist told me about this idea that one of my coping mechanisms is criticism and judgment, that it is one of the ways that I protect myself. And when he first kind of started talking about that, and when I first really started unpacking it, it was hard for me to see because I had it so unconsciously kind of programmed into me that I knew better than other people did, whether it was because I was smarter or had more life experience or I could just see things differently. And so I was oftentimes, and you had to bear the brunt of this as my fucking wife for the past, 46 years, but it's like I would always assume that I knew better than the external world and the people around me. And it was a really long time before I was able to see that as first and foremost, like wrong, that I just didn't. And then going deeper into it, understanding where that coping mechanism came from. Because what happened was I started to really connect with my nervous system and recognize when I was dysregulated. And when I was dysregulated internally within my own nervous system, I was feeling anxious, afraid, sad, literally like any uncomfortable emotion comes up inside of me. One of my first go-tos is to deflect and to turn things around and to criticize the outside world. And I don't think I'm alone in that. I think that a lot of people do that. And I think that's perfectly fine and healthy. And we're going to talk about why it's important to judge the outside world at times, right? We have to be critical of certain things in society, and we have to be able to protect ourselves from certain things. All of that stuff is very valid and important. And then underneath the surface of a lot of these things, especially when it's not those big important things that need to be, like when it's just you in your own head and you're judging, the people around you, that's about you. That's 100% about you. At least it was for me.
Yeah. I think there's another aspect that would be like good to look at too, where I can hear people when you're the difference between, because I started mentioning how if I'm feeling this way, then you probably are too. And it's either going to be like the codependents out there that are hearing that being like, yes, I can completely base my emotions off of the other person now, or the ones that are calling it out and healing that. It's not invalidating and placing your feelings on the other person. I might be onto something because my throat's starting to go just a little bit. It's not invalidating and placing your feelings. You still have to be able to hear your feelings and what you're feeling. And really, it's what we're talking about here is you do have healthy discernment. You do have the ability to honor what you're feeling, speak to what you're feeling, call it out when it's not working, when there's something off. There is that healthiness, but what you are doing is, instead of thinking that everything is, you're the only one that feels that way and that somebody else is in the wrong, you're opening up that lens a little bit to being, when you're 100% right, somebody else has to be wrong. You're like, okay, there might be more to this experience than this. There are definitely times when somebody else is 100% wrong. There absolutely is. But when we're talking about navigating your day-to-day relationships, your healthy relationships, you're not in a traumatic experience, not having something like really big coming up in your space, then chances are there's another side. Chances are somebody else is having an experience there, and there's more to be seen than what your first opinion is in that space. And that's kind of what we're talking about. Not, well, if I'm feeling this way, I'll be codependent and just place all of my feelings onto you and then make you feel better so that I feel better. It's not that. It's including other people's experiences in your experience, and having accountability for yourself, having discernment for yourself, and not having everything pointing at other people 100% of the time. Hopefully that makes sense, but if not, you feel free to write in. We'll talk about it. We'll have a conversation.
Send us a piece of mail.
Yeah.
I think the important part for me when I think about all of this stuff, because it's an ongoing practice for me, it's catching myself in judgment. It's catching myself when I am criticizing, and acknowledging first and foremost that it's happening, acknowledging that I'm feeling something underneath the surface. I'm feeling upset or angry or sad or tired, or, the wide range of things that I might be feeling in the moment is pretty big. And then it's, again, using the discernment. Like, let's talk about discernment for a minute, right? Because there's healthy discernment between, oh my goodness, this is I'm trying to break this down in such a way where it makes sense. But the truth of it is, it's a really, really big topic, because we have to judge the world around us in order to survive.
Yeah.
Like, we have to be able to discern what is good for us and what is not good for us. So we have to have some criticism of the things that are around us, just from like a strictly survival standpoint.
Yeah.
And I think the part that gets real slippery is recognizing when it's more about the emotional part of what's taking place inside of you, and less about the external physical part of, this is safe for me or not. Does that make sense? Yeah. But then there's even like emotional safety, because there's times where environments obviously aren't safe for you emotionally, and that's just as valid and important as it is physically. And so, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to articulate what I was just saying, but again, it's the whole idea that when you are judging the outside world, like maybe we don't need to make it as big as the world, even though that's what happens, right? Maybe it's just the people around you. Maybe it's just your partner, your family, your kids. Your kids are a big one, right? Those kids are great little mirrors for everybody. And it's that opportunity to just lean in. Tell the story. Let's tell the story about how this came up recently.
Oh, sure.
In our everyday life.
Sure.
Because we're cruising down the freeway.
First, before we tell the story, I want to point out, like, I'm not free of, obviously, you're going to hear, I'm not free of judgment. I'm not saying, like, to never judge. Like, there's this thing of, I understand there's, like, the goal is to not judge other people. The goal is, I'm not there yet. But what I can do, and what I'm getting lessons on, is when I am really judgy, like, it's just an opportunity to look at myself. It's not saying I'm wrong. It's like an opportunity. Like, where is that in you? And I used to hear that. Like, if you judge somebody, then that's because that's a part of you and it's in you. And I'm like, well, I'm not this. I'm not this. I'm not this. All of these horrible things that I judge, right? And that's the first thing that people come to the comments with. Oh, like, I'm not doing this to somebody, so it's not my fault. And it's always these extremes that we go to. And you're absolutely correct. And I understand that because that's how I would feel too. Well, I haven't done this. You're right. I haven't done that. So I can judge that. But there's an experience there. There's something there. And sometimes it's like it's these little subtle things that you're judging so strongly that might be a reflection in yourself. That might be. And you get to have all of these healthy judgments. It's so hard to caveat correctly on, because this is such a big conversation. And honestly, it's like we're trying to fill the gaps with who's listening. We're trying to fill the gaps with you and what's coming up with you and how you're feeling and responding to what we're saying and how you're feeling like it applies to you, and we're pointing our fingers at you. And honestly, we can't hear you. We can't hear you right now. So
you got to get closer to your microphone.
Right? So it's like trying to guess comments, trying to guess what emotions we're bringing up in other people, trying to use our own experiences with that. And we can only have a conversation here with us. And where we use judgment, some better than others, sometimes more than others, to help illuminate parts of us that personally we need to do better on. Now, I may feel that spreads across the globe, that we all can do better, but you may not feel like it applies to you, and that's okay. You get to have that. But one of the things that you want to talk about, what came up, was it's my crow moment. Let me move my mic because I'm nervous.
It's just funny.
It is funny. So I had, oh my gosh, I had some big blinders on. I used to have a little bit of some road rage, just a little bit. I've never gone I'm not going after people and, chasing them down and freaking out, going through windows, trying to get, I'm not like that, but in the car.
Yeah. You're very much like a private road rager.
Yeah. I don't actually want to make people feel bad.
You keep it all contained within the vehicle.
Within the vehicle. And there's more than that. So you get the whole thing. So my vision is I used to have a problem with it, but I got that shit under wraps. And when I was younger, when the kids were younger in the car, I would if somebody drove, cut me off, I'd call them a DB. I'm like, oh, you DB. Thinking this is how it was in my brain. Okay. I understand that that's not how it really is, but I'm like, oh, you DB, this did happen. And I thought I was being so clever. And then finally our daughter was like, Mom, I know what that means. I'm like, what does it mean? She's all douchebag. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm not going to say that anymore. But I felt like I had a good rap on emotions. I felt like I had a good rap while I was driving. I didn't feel like I expressed it. There were times by myself, I would get really mad at somebody. Nobody else was in the car with me. Nobody else was in the car. And I'd get really mad. And I'd be like, what is wrong with you? I hope you have a good day. And then I would bring it to the cute aggression, right? So I'm like, oh, things go really well for you. I hope you're really happy in life. I hope you have a good day. Just trying to get it out, but not say mean things. So my brain, I'm like, I don't have an issue with this.
Yeah.
Because I fucking blinders. And our kids, man, I don't know what's wrong with them. Like going around like ready to fight people, like throwing out like in the road, like having all this, not really ready to fight people, but like having an extensive amount of road rage.
Yeah, we'd be driving somewhere with all the kids sometimes. And, you know, I'm the one driving oftentimes. And everybody else in the car is getting so upset about what's going on, about the car in front of us that just did this, or that person didn't use their blinker, or I can't believe they just decided to change lanes in front of us, or, I mean, you name it. Everybody in the car is getting very, very upset and angry.
I hear you're saying everybody in the car, because I also thought that didn't apply to me.
Right.
I thought, and then, so the kids are going off, and I'm like, judgy glasses on.
Right, you're sitting up there in the front seat.
Where did they get this from?
Hey you, thank you for listening to the podcast. We really appreciate it. We set a goal for ourselves that we want to reach over 1 million people on YouTube. And truthfully, we're going to need your help to get there. So if you haven't yet, head over to YouTube and subscribe to the Steph and Craig Show. And be sure to click that notification button so that you get a little ding every time we release a new episode. We're really grateful that you chose to listen to our podcast, and we hope that you're enjoying this episode. Now let's get back to it.
Why are they behaving that way? Why are they freaking out so much? And I'm like, you need to calm down. Like, you are going to cause a problem. What is like, chill out. It's not that big of a deal. You know, and then we were in the car the other day and
alone, just the two of us.
And it came up.
Let me tell this
You're
part of it.
You're going to tell this part of it?
Because it's so funny.
Okay.
So we were driving back from Knoxville, and we were having this conversation about, I think we were talking about this topic about
I got my judgy hat on. You better tell it right.
We were processing through some stuff, as we typically do. And we were talking, I don't even remember how it came up, but I pointed out to Steph that like that thing that the kids do, obviously they learned that behavior from someone. And you had the awareness in the moment of like, I think you thought I did it. Like, did you think that they picked it up from me?
Listen to his innocence, not seeing shit. No, I know you have these like little tips, but you're not big on the road rage. You're not big on it. You have these things like you are very friendly. You're aggressive friendly. Hi, nice to go ahead. You know, and so the kids also picked up on that. But I was just kind of like, where did they get this?
They must be watching too much TV. This is video games.
Damn Fast and the Furious.
So I kind of pointed out to Steph that they might have picked it up from her. And she was like, no, there's no way. There's no way at all that there's just no way. And then within the breadth of like 15, 20 seconds later,
the universe had our back on that.
Right. I had my back.
I had your back. Well, mine too, because now I get awareness. But they were like, are you ready to look at some shit?
Yeah, somebody had the audacity. I mean, just this completely ignorant asshole person on the freeway.
I don't understand.
They were in the fast lane doing at least 5 over the speed limit.
That's not true. That's not true.
Stephanie just is like, you just went off on this poor person driving in the fast lane.
Is that what happened?
Yeah.
What happened? I went off on this poor person?
Well, you didn't pull over and berate them.
What did I do?
Tell us, what did you do?
Well, no, you tell me. I'm curious because this is a blind spot, but I'm curious what your version of going off.
You made a comment about the person driving slow.
They were not going 5 over. They were blocking traffic forever.
They were broke down in the fast lane. They were barely going, like, if the speed limit is 65, they were doing at least 70 in the fast lane. And Steph definitely wanted to go about 90.
Okay, I don't know if this is all.
It was really an amazing moment because what happened was quite literally, it was like, baby, you do this thing. And you're like, I don't do this thing. Tick, tick, tick. 5 seconds later, she does the exact fucking thing. And I just cracked up. It was too much for me. I couldn't stop laughing. I was like, Oh my gosh.
You grabbed your side and you're like, I can't breathe. And I was like, oh my gosh, this might be a thing I need to look at.
It was such a perfect example of the behavior.
And then the next one, like I got stuck behind somebody. Well, first of all, it was a long time. I was patient for a long time.
15 seconds.
Nope.
Oh, but you were stuck behind that person for a couple of miles.
They had just they had writing on their window with their Venmo. They were going slow
I love
so people
that
could.
Suddenly, you've got to justify.
I understand why they were going slow, but enough's enough.
Yeah.
Move in the right lane.
Yeah.
Move over. Move.
You know, the moral of this episode
over.
is really those
I got distracted. We're not talking about driving.
Those left lane loafers that need to get out of those left. Yeah, baby. That's the point of this.
So they were like, and then I calmed myself because I'm like, okay, I can see it. It's just because we're talking about it.
What did it feel like to have the awareness in the moment?
Well, then there was the double awareness.
Right.
Because the next person decided to, and I'm like, oh, now I'm going to get stuck behind Maureen. And you were like, are you, and I was, okay, we got a problem. There's stuff that I need to look at. I can see it. It's prominent. I haven't seen it. And then honestly, it scared the hell out of me. What came up there was complete fear. And it made me sick because it's one thing to yeah, I'll get with that. Yeah, I know that's an issue. I know I have a sugar addiction. I know I eat too much crappy food. It's there. But this was, I didn't see it. I not only, did I not think it applied to me? I had, the blinders were so thick that it wasn't even, here. I thought I did a good job here. And to realize that it was such a, no, you're, you need to get a hold of this. How could I have not seen it? So I felt out of control. I felt like I didn't know. For a minute, I'm I'm crazy. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know who I am. I don't have control of myself. I'm out of control. I'm disgusting. It brought a shame spiral from complete fear of, how could I not see this? There's no excuse to not see. There's no excuse for you to not see your behavior. You know what you're doing.
And you don't.
And I don't. Sometimes. Now, granted, I'm not chasing people down. I'm not being violent and being what? There is those limits here. But it's behavior that I didn't recognize in myself, but I recognized in the kids. And I was like, you can do, and it would upset me so much. This is unacceptable behavior. This is it was scaring me. I'm you're going to get your, what if you're out there driving and somebody's got a gun, you can't act like this. You can't. And I'm is it that extreme? I don't think. It just scared me because I was so sure. So complete terror of not having awareness of myself.
Now that you've had a couple of days, how does it feel now? Same?
It kind of, because I also still get really passionate about it.
Yeah.
There's a part of it that's comical, and I'm allowing it to be comical, not because, I'm allowing it to be comical so that I can look at it. I'm allowing it to be you didn't see that? How, I want to bring awareness to it, and I don't want to shame spiral myself out to.
I think that's really important.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think that's really, really important because it's so, especially when it comes to stuff in relation to the kids, right?
Yeah.
We both do that where it's if we've done anything, anything, the mildest of simplest things, if we've done, one minor mistake that affected our children adversely in any way, shape, then we're just we're the worst person in the whole wide world. So it's really easy to get caught up in that shame. And I mean, at this point in life, I think it's good to have awareness of something like this. We joke about it in this regards because your quote unquote road rage, it's not hurting anybody. But it's also, because this is the other thing that we talked about too, where
I'm feeling so ashamed.
Are you?
Yeah, it's big.
It's
okay.
That behavior of lashing out at people when you're driving, at least in regards, and correct me if I'm wrong, because we did talk about this, but at the same time, like, I don't want to put words in your mouth. It's coming from an activation place. It's coming from, you're simply really activated when you're in the car driving, and especially when you're the one driving, because truthfully, driving is a stressful thing, right? On the highway, on the freeway, it's a stressful thing. So your nervous system is going to be activated regardless. And that's just you trying to navigate that level of activation that's going on in your nervous system. So when you're really activated, I'm going to be lashing out a little bit more. I'm going to be processing things a little bit more. I'm going to be speaking out against the things that are happening, because that's my way of verbalizing and getting that energy out of me. So there's nothing wrong with that if we look at it through that lens, right?
Well, I know I do think there's something wrong with it. Like, I totally understand. Like, I've got my kids in the car. Of course, I'm going to be like that. I was afraid something was going to happen. I got afraid. So therefore, but like, being afraid and then being angry is not a behavior that I want to cultivate. And I mean, yes, there's levels. I'm not a violent person. I'm not being violent. I'm not being like just wildly crazy. Like, if I was next to a cop and behaving the same way, the cop's not going to notice. Like, it's not this thing, but it was enough that I caused discomfort in our family, that I caused discomfort in our kids, that I taught reactionary behaviors that they are now reacting on and stirring inside themselves. So, yeah, not okay. I don't think it's okay. And I definitely want awareness with it. And it's something that I want to, shift. Like, and it sucks because, like, our youngest just turned 18. Like, fuck.
Just in time
to, like, you know, everybody's got their own vehicles, their own life. And I'm like, I've got this under control. I'm now looking at shit. Like, I'm not ready to look at it.
I'm going to go gather up all the kids and put them in the car so that they can drive with me, so that they can learn not to have road rage.
Right.
That'll be fun. I'm going to just film it. Yeah.
Well, you can't aggressively be polite to people either. Ooh, I quickly shared that. Damn. That's unhealthy. That's toxic.
It kind of goes back to the whole thing of, like, when we externalize things, it's a reflection of what we're feeling internally.
Yeah. I felt very singled out here, and like it was just like me. So I very much wanted to take some of that off and be like, you're a problem too.
Yeah.
I needed to share that shame.
I am a problem.
No, that's not, like, I don't need to share the shame. I totally needed to, like, get some of that. I'm like, if you're just going to look at me, you got to look at yourself.
Yeah.
Or we can just look at me for a minute.
Sit in there for a minute.
You can just look at me for a minute.
Well, if we're going to measure things like on a classic Craig scale of 1 to 10 or 0%
what are we
to
doing?
100%, right?
Okay. I just poked myself in my eye with my glasses. I'm so nervous. Okay.
You having passive aggressive road rage is pretty low on the scale of things that, you know, are detrimental to the health of you and your family. I think it's okay.
It's making me sick in my stomach right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I associate it with the people in my life that I've seen that are violent.
That you
with
learned
road
it from.
rage, right? That are confrontational.
Yeah, it's
that
learned
will
behavior.
go take the vehicle and charge other vehicles.
Yeah.
That will, like, and so I can't see anything less than that.
That's the whole thing of, like, I want to talk about this because we both do this all the time. And this is a good thing to bring up as well, because so right now you're activated.
Oh my gosh, so much so.
Right? It's clear.
Because I feel like I'm
embarrassed, you're ashamed,
Yeah.
we're talking about difficult things.
And
so
it's okay
system,
to feel bad about this. Like, there's this part where you're allowed to allow yourself to feel like, I don't have to be like, oh, you know, I can feel the crap so that I can heal.
Yeah.
I don't need to berate and, like, rub my nose in it, but I can, like, oh, this feels like shit. Man, this is heavy. This is crappy behavior because it is. And I want to, like.
But this is a really interesting thing.
Okay.
Sorry. Because I do this.
Okay. What do you got?
We'll go to the extreme.
Okay.
So when we have awareness of something that we've done.
Are you going to try and make me feel better?
I'm not going to try to make you feel better. I think
Okay.
it's just a human nature thing.
Okay.
I think it's a limbic brain thing. I think
Here we
it's a
go.
little kid thing. When a little kid messes up and has awareness that, not all little kids, when we were little kids, when I was a little kid, I'll just share from my own lived fucking experience. How does that sound? We can try that for a change. When I was a little kid and I messed up, I immediately felt like I was a piece of shit. I immediately felt like I was worthless. I would go to the extreme end of whatever it was, right? Where suddenly it's like, well, I've messed up. I broke something. I lied. Whatever the case is, whatever was going on when I was a little kid, whatever the situation was, it was immediate that especially if I got in trouble or if it got highlighted or if it got pointed out, I would always go to the extreme end version of like, I'm worthless. I'm the big problem here. It's this catastrophizing thing when it comes to shame and guilt. And that part, I think for me, and you might relate, because I can kind of see through the haze of this for a second where it's like, me going to the extreme and just immediately going to shame is also a way for me to avoid responsibility. Because, and again, I'm talking about this from the lens of like, I can see how as a little kid, right? That's how I was programmed. That's what I saw my parents do. Where in order to avoid responsibility for their actions, they would then shame themselves into depression, shame themselves into victimhood, shame themselves into, avoidance as a way, whether, I don't think it's conscious, but again, it's in a way to avoid responsibility for those actions. And that to me, like sounds like, feels like, I can see it clearly through the lens that I'm at now as an adult. That seems to me like very much like little kid behavior, where you become like, oh, I'm just worthless. I'm just a piece of shit. Or even just the self-internalization of it all, right? I'm not externalizing all of it to get you to like feel bad for me, even though I do that. That's very much one of my coping mechanisms. But just the internalization of it becomes this, yes, it's like a program, and yes, it's kind of like self-hatred, but I can also see it now as a way to just simply avoid responsibility. And that's very much learned behavior. My parents weren't really big on taking responsibility for their negative actions. What do you think of that? I don't know if I've had that awareness before. Does that even make sense?
It does. Thank you for sharing that. That was it does make sense. And that's what we'll circle back. Like, that's what it felt like I was explaining to a sense. And I'll circle back to that. But like, you did a really good job, like bringing awareness and expressing that. And I'm glad you were able to. What does that feel like to have that awareness? To see that behavior, to see that, what does that bring up in you?
I don't know. I don't know if I have enough awareness to kind of look at it that clearly.
Okay.
But it does seem to me, boy, I don't know. I don't know if this is, I'm all sorts of fucking uncomfortable now.
Right. It was a pretty big awareness there. That was some.
Well, it's this whole idea of, I don't know if I've ever thought of shame as, I can think of shame from a bunch of different lenses, but I've never thought of it as, not necessarily as a coping mechanism, but as a way for me to protect myself. Shame has always felt like something that I used to hurt myself.
Okay.
But what if it's a way to protect myself? I don't know.
Let's unpack that for just a second, because we have brought this to a sense before where
Have we talked about this before?
Okay, so I'll spark a memory here of where I learned that shaming, like if you were to like overreact hard, would protect you from violence.
Yes.
A lot of times. So we've also talked about how like it was in reference to self-sabotage, and I'm just drawing these dots here, okay, to try, I'm like doing a yellow brick road here. Self-sabotage, why we do it. The thought was, if I keep doing this, like what is it doing for me?
Yeah, it's
what
a
am
way
I
to
getting
control,
from
right?
what am I getting from it? How is this helping me? Why? How do I? Because I'm going to keep doing this thing. It's because it's kept me alive in the past. It's helped me. So my body says this is something to help keep me safe, even if it's not anymore, right? So it was a way to have control. I knew what to expect. I have these things. So when you're looking at the shame and bringing that out, you've used it to hurt yourself. But at another point in time, it had another role. It had another role. What did you gain by that? If you were hurting yourself with shame, if you were...
It's so hard for me when you ask me those questions
Okay.
like that. Because especially when we're in this space of, like, we're not, super deep into inner child work right now, but we're touching upon some things.
You mean in our life or in this podcast? Or right now? Because I think we are in general.
Yeah. We typically are.
Yeah.
So when you ask me those leading questions,
Yes.
I feel
Was it a
so
leading?
stupid.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I
you didn't do
definitely
anything
didn't mean to
wrong.
be a leading or make you feel that
You didn't
way.
do anything wrong. It's like you're asking me a question that you know the answer to. You're like, what else could that shaming be? How could that be protecting you?
Well, you had already said the answer. You had already said that you had always seen it as a way to punish yourself, but that you were seeing it as
A way to protect myself.
Protect yourself. So it's like you said that right at the beginning. You gave the answer.
Now I can't understand it. Like I
Right.
don't get it. Help me get it,
Okay.
please.
I will do my best.
You can't fail here.
Neither can you.
Well,
All right. You were mentioning how it started like with your parents. It started how they used
fuck those
shame.
guys.
You learned a way to protect yourself. You learned a way to protect yourself. You also were
With shame?
with shame, because what was your role? You always had the answer. You always knew what to do. You had the best choices.
Okay.
You knew the best choices. You knew better than everybody else.
Okay.
Like, this is just one aspect, right? And also I feel like this is more, I'm just telling you what I see. It doesn't have to resonate for you. Okay.
Well, that's the really cool part is I want to know what you see because it's like it's the whole thing we were just talking about, the road rage thing where you didn't see that.
Oh shit, no.
I
But
saw
we're
it.
going to stay focused on this part for a minute.
No, let's sidetrack.
You had this role that not only did you embody as an adult, but you were given as a kid. Like you weren't wrong, they were. Like the shaming of other people, the judging of other people. And if you did something wrong, that didn't quite fit. That puts you at risk. So when you're shaming yourself, and this is why people, like if you look at, you see people when they have a problem, they shame themselves, they force themselves. You work harder, you're not doing enough. You're trying to shame yourself into appropriate behavior that you think is appropriate.
Yes.
Because that's how you were taught. So when you're shaming yourself and you see how unhealthy it is now, but what your little brain, not little now, but like little child brain learned is that if I can berate myself, I'm not going to make that mistake again. I'm not going to make that mistake again. I'm not going to be vulnerable. I'm not going to get hurt like that because I'm going to punish myself enough to not repeat that. Does that kind of...
Yes, that makes sense.
Just a bit. And when we learn these things, and you're like, you have to look, it's like it doesn't fit now. Like that doesn't make any sense. But as a little kid, thinking like, man, I was wrong there, feeling all of that, wanting to fix it. It also, and here's another one, is when you're shaming yourself because you got a reaction from a parent, we attach it to the fact that you spilled milk, right? And if you could just shame yourself to not do that, to not be so stupid, to not spill that, to fix it, fixing the problem. But what we're actually doing is we're taking the shame from the parents' behavior because
Can I ask
they
you a
lashed
question?
out.
I'm so sorry, babe. I don't mean to cut you off.
Okay.
But I genuinely have a question for you.
Okay, you're deflecting, but okay. What do you got?
Sorry, I did cut you off. I can hold on to my question. Finish what you were articulating. If you are able to without
You internalize the shame that your parents are feeling. So when they're not able to feel their shame and they're shaming you, when they're berating you, when they're punishing you for whatever reason, and they're not, you take that shame as yours and you start to use that same technique to correct your behavior that they're using on you. And so
You internalize the shame that your parents were unable to process and feel.
they gave to you and you said, oh, this is mine. Yeah.
Well, fuck all that.
Yeah.
That goes towards, you know, it's so funny. We sit down to do these podcast episodes and like, just for you, the listener out there, we're recording this in our house. Like we have a spare bedroom where we've built this amazing little studio. So it's like, hey, we're going to record a podcast today. And we put on some podcasting clothes because the rest of the time we're just walking around in not podcasting clothes. Right. And we come and sit down in this little bedroom. And then we end up talking about stuff that,
Bless you. Sorry, the cat.
holy sneeze, Batman. We end up talking about stuff that opens up these wounds and opens up these things. And it's hard sometimes. It's hard to continually carry on this conversation where right now I'm like, okay, I'm good. Let's wrap this motherfucker up and be done with this episode, because like that idea of shame is a thing, man. You know, I just said it's a thing, but it's a theme. It's a program. It's something that I definitely have dealt with throughout my life. And I know that I've heard that contextualized in some way recently, where it's like, because it's the epigenetic aspect of it too, right? Where whatever your parents are unable to kind of heal and process, good luck, take that, deal with that, figure out that. Because I can't. So now it's your turn to try to solve that riddle. And shame's a big riddle for me. Shame's been one of those things that I've really had to kind of carry my whole fucking life. And I can see it so plain as day, as it's like, here you go. This one's yours now. I wasn't able to fucking unwrap this and figure this one out. I couldn't put this puzzle together. So now it's your turn to try to solve it. And I get it. Anyways, yeah, that's a big one for me, babe.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to your question, and it's not me diverting
Yeah, you had a question. Go
I
ahead.
did have a question, and I want to go back to it because it's an honest question, and it's also like, truthfully, if I just sit here and wallow for a minute, if I just sit here in the shame of it all, right, then it's going to be hard for me to continue with this podcast because it's overwhelming and it's really sad. Okay. It's so sad to me to think of myself as like this. Every morning I sit down and I journal. And the first part of that process is me looking at a picture of myself when I was 5 years old. So I have that same picture in the journal. So he hangs out in my journal, and every morning when I wake up, I look at that fucking picture of me when I'm 5 years old. And it breaks my heart to think that 5-year-old little boy is already carrying so much. He's 5, right? And the level of stuff that little boy is both carrying and had to navigate. And, it's sad. It's just really sad. And it's angry. It's angry. It causes me anger. But mostly just sadness. The question that I had for you, let's see if I can get it back now. Because you were talking about this. I had this recognition of, it was a thing that I was judging in you, because this is now back to like judgment, right? And criticism, where I had awareness of something that I will see you do. And this is a blind spot for me. That's why I was going to ask you this question. And now I'm trying to remember it. Dang it. Help me.
Well,
help me remember the thing in my brain that only I know right now.
Well, while you're trying to remember that, maybe I could go back and finish what I was saying.
Please do.
And then maybe that'll re-spark it. We want to take a moment and really thank you for sharing your time with us. We know it's a valuable asset that you have, and we're honored that you're spending it with us. We both have experiences over the years where podcasts have helped us and influenced us greatly. That's why we're so passionate about podcasting, and we have a big mission with this show. We aim to reach over 1 million people, and we need your help. If you wouldn't mind doing these 3 things, it will help us grow and expand and reach more people. First off, subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. You can click the notification button as well so you don't miss an episode each time a new one is released. Secondly, if you would take a minute and leave us a review, that helps the podcast grow and expand as well. And last up, share it with somebody who you think might benefit, because we believe we all do better when we heal together. That's it. Thank you. We appreciate everything. Now back to the show. What I was saying before, like, how does that make me feel, right? My first reaction when I realized there was this massive blind spot was incredible shame. Like, I was berating myself for it. Like, this shame, it like made me physically sick. And then I was saying that, like, now, like, no, I can sit in this. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, now it's not an over, like, this shame thing. It's like, no, this is bad behavior. This is something that is like, it's not my higher self. It is not how I want to show up. I can sit in the discomfort of the consequences of my actions. I can sit in the discomfort of my behaviors. I can feel the bad. I can feel the crap that it is, instead of being like, oh, I don't need to project it onto somebody else, and I don't have to wrap up in a shame blanket of, like, let me just show you how horrible I am. Let me just, like, all of this is like, I can process this. I can sit and be like, yeah, that really sucks. That's behavior that I carried on. That's a blind spot that I had. That's something that I passed down. That's something, and yeah, it didn't start with me. Not the point of that. The point is that I'm 44 years old, and this is something that, like, it's time to sit in that awareness of it. It's time to, like, oh, you need to feel the consequences of your actions. Like, it's okay, because if I can feel it, if I can sit in it, in the weight of it, then I can heal it. Then I can do better next time. And if I can sit in this crappy consequence, then I can sit in other ones. And if I'm willing to sit with myself in the choices and the decisions and the behaviors that I have that I'm not proud of, that I don't, then I can sit in all of them. I can shift the way that I'm going to show up. And I realize I'm not going to be able to sit in all of them, because I'm a human. And I'm not going to sit in every crappy thing and therefore not make any mistakes ever again, which is what the ego will say, you know. I'm going to have blind spots, and I'm going to keep fucking up. And I'm going to have things that aren't good. But the things that are brought to me that I can do something about, I am not afraid to sit in the crappy feeling of the awareness of my actions and the consequences and the repercussions. Because, like, I have to sit with it. I have to be okay with not feeling good about it without turning it into a shame thing, which completely bypasses the entire thing.
That's my question.
That's your question. Okay, great.
Good job, babe.
Woo!
Podcast over.
See?
So I want to ask this question from you, or Tor, fuck, babe.
You had it.
I'm going to ask you this question, and I honestly, genuinely, I'm asking you this question from the perspective of, I want help. I think this is a shadow for me.
Oh, okay.
So it's going to sound super judgy and criticism, but that's what we're talking about.
Okay.
Right? So sometimes you will overreact as a way to avoid facing the issue. So sometimes you'll get triggered by something, or there's something, like, for example, and this is like an imaginary example. This isn't like this didn't happen yesterday or something like that, but it'll be like, hey, we need to talk about something. And then instead of talking about that thing, you'll have a big emotional expression, a big emotional outburst, or an overreaction about something else, rather than talking about the thing that we need to talk about. So it's like using your emotions as a way to create a like a distraction. So then we're not addressing the issue. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense?
It does. I mean, definitely would be
I feel like
easier.
I could break that down and articulate that better.
It would be easier with an example. But I understand you're like, I'm not ready to call you out on a podcast of something that we haven't talked about.
Right. But the reason I'm asking it is because I'm genuinely sitting here realizing how this is so silly too, right? Because
Okay.
this is what the whole podcast episode is about, is like if we're judging something externally, then it's something that we do.
Yes.
So do I do that?
Was that the question?
Yeah. That means I must be doing that.
Sweetheart, we both have a shame wound
I
from
know,
our
but
childhood.
this isn't, I'm not talking specifically about shame. I'm talking about go ahead.
Yeah, actually. I'm trying to figure out, like, I don't just want to call you out on it. I don't
Well,
want to just
we don't
say
need to
it,
tiptoe around it. We can
right?
go straight towards
That's
it.
what I'm doing. That's why I was like, yes.
I totally do that.
Very much. Very much. Like, and I can give a silly example.
Perfect. Let's laugh.
I
Let's bring
can
some
give
fucking
a
laughter into the
silly
shit show of a shame
example. And it's one that I use with you frequently because
you make me laugh with it.
no, it's because sometimes I throw things in your face and I shouldn't. So it's one that I laugh about, and
Okay.
I do hope that it makes you laugh, but it's my gentle reminder in a funny way of, hey, like, I see this. And it was one that you had awareness of, so that we were able to.
Okay, good.
So it's like I point it out in a way that I think I'm calling you out, but I'm not calling you out by saying, hey, you're being like, there's this thing.
There's a lot of things like that where we have like safe things that we can point at each other. Remember, you're doing that thing.
And then the other person's like, oh,
God,
okay.
dang it, I'm totally doing that thing.
So as soon as I start telling you, you'll recognize it.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay. It is
Because road rage is going to be one for you now.
road rage. Okay.
Where we get to joke about it.
Toast is yours.
Toast.
And when we were in a conversation, I was asking you something, and it was like this hard thing that you didn't want to respond to. So you were making toast. Like,
Okay.
the toast hadn't even popped out yet. You were still looking at the toaster, and you're like, bam, and you were like, really? And I'm like, really? Toast is taking your full brain power right now. And then you were like laughing. It was this whole thing of where you were too busy, because yours is, I'm too busy. I'm too stressed. I have too much going on. I can't deal with this thing that you want me to look at. And because clearly I'm making toast. And so it was like, oh, dude, really? And you laughed and I laughed. And now it's this thing of like, you're making toast. Yeah.
To be fair,
So
toast isn't as easy for some of us.
I mean, that shit could pop out at any time. You got to be ready with
You
the
got to get it
butter.
out when it's right off,
Right.
right? So it's still hot. So then you put the butter. Baby,
You
I was
even,
really
like,
focused.
You were. So it's like that thing of like, how
that
dare you
thing-
disrupt my space?
Because you've been talking a lot lately, and talking is relative, right? What I mean is you've been
insane.
teasing me a lot lately for my seemingly inability to multitask. And where I will use that like, oh, I can't multitask as a deflection for avoidance. Like I avoid responsibility. I avoid the conversation. I avoid the moment where I'm like, I'm trying to, I have to focus on this one thing. And you're like, oh, you can't focus on two things? And you're like jokingly, okay. Anyways, let's move on. No, I guess that's a good example, babe. Because as soon as you bring up toast and you start talking about it, I can start to I can feel defensiveness coming up inside of me. I definitely want to start deflecting everything back towards you. And so it's good awareness. It's so funny how we do this, isn't it? Like this fucking dance that we do all the time. It's so like, there's a part of me that just laughs at the humor of it all because it's so obvious that we're in this shadowy, fun dance of like, hey, this is the part of your shit that you don't want to look at. And you're like, that's not just my shit. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it's just yours because I can see it really clearly. And you're like, tell me about it. I can see it super clear. It's happening right now all the time.
Describe
and I'm like,
it to me.
I'm pretty sure this one's just yours, babe. And you're like, okay, because I'm pretty sure this one's just yours. And I'm like, no, that one's yours. It's the same fucking thing. That's what you were saying earlier, where it kind of always comes back to we're feeling the same things. We're trying to navigate some of these same things, right? You and I have a lot of similar wounds, but I don't think it's just you and I. I think that shame and guilt and judgment, and these are big things that people have had to kind of deal with and unpack and sit with.
Mm-hmm.
And they manifest in such funny, wonky ways.
They do.
Yeah.
And so this is how it can show up, like how we started this, how it shows up in our relationship, and how it can be that prominent. That's the awareness of how is it showing up in other relationships? How is it showing up in other than just your primary relationship? How is it showing up with your parents? How is it showing up with your kids? And
The
it
parent
doesn't.
one is really hard.
The parent one is really hard, and like I'm
Notice
glad
we didn't go there.
right, because that's like I'm not in a space for that right now.
Yeah.
There's a part where judgment is healthy.
Yes.
There is that time of when you stop shaming yourself for all of their internalized shame that they put on you. And it can be caregivers, it can be teachers, it can be partner, like wherever you're at, right? You can, does this check this box? You didn't say this. Well, that's okay. You've got the box there. Yes, it checks that box. And you quit putting it on yourself and you say, actually, that was you.
Yeah.
Actually, this isn't my shame. This is yours. This is yours to carry. This is your, like, you put the judgment where it goes and then you move on. Like, and it's not like, oh, I judged you, now I move on. I didn't mean to move on. I just like, there's a part of where you don't get stuck there. When you get stuck there is where there's different levels, there's different things that you go through, and it's at different times of your life. Like there's a point of time where judgment is really, really healthy. And then there comes a point of where it's not serving you anymore. There's a point of where it's not healthy for you anymore. And only you know when that is. And there comes a point when it's where judgment turns into a window. It turns into a key for you to say, okay, I can see this. Now, what am I not looking at in me? What am I ready to move past? There are so many different ways that this shows up in your life, depending on where you are. And if you're in a place where judgment is really healthy, then when you're hearing somebody say, how is it really about you? How can you, like, that's not going to help you.
Yeah.
Right there. And if you are at a place of where you're using judgment to see what's going on inside of you and heal, and you're like moving through this process of something that you've experienced, then to stay stuck in it isn't healthy for you. So just because somebody is at a different spot doesn't mean somebody's wrong. When you are hurtful to other people, that's something like, I hope you look at that. I hope you look at that. But judgment shows up. It shows up in relationships. It shows up in social media. It shows up at work. It shows up in the car when you're judging other people's driving or lack of ability of, wink, wink. It shows up when you make uncomfortable humor because you're scared. Like it shows up. We judge ourselves. We judge others. And it's not, I mean, you can just say that's the way I am. Things need to be there. Or you can do something different.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm hungry. I want some toast.
You want some toast? Okay, we're about ready to focus.
Hold on, baby.
It's toast.
You know how hard it is for me to make toast. Anyways, everybody, thank you. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. We can joke about it.
Yeah.
In our road ragey, toasty cars.
I'm going, my next thing is to, I think I'm going to ask the kids when they feel comfortable, right? Like finding a spot where I'm like, how do you, like, what's it like to drive with me?
You know what would
like,
be really funny?
like, to see if they can be like,
right?
Listen, lady.
What would be really funny is, because you and I can see each other's shadows, right?
Uh-huh.
Boy, I can only imagine what our kids can see, right? Because they're going to see parts of us that neither one of us can see.
If they were to listen to this podcast, I'm like, oh, very insightful of you. Let us tell you what it's really like to drive with you, crazy like assholes.
And then it's like, that's not my kid's responsibility either to tell me what my shadow is.
No, I didn't. I definitely didn't mean that. I meant
oh no, that was me judging myself.
Okay.
And be like, oh, there you go again. We've been doing this really funny thing too, where we bring awareness to our ego all the time, because. Yeah, that's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other podcast.
Maybe that's what we'll do next
episode.
week or 2 weeks from now, or who knows. But
who knows?
Expect the best.
Plan for the greatest.
And we'll see you guys soon.
Got a wild ride. Wait and see, you and me, we were meant to be.
We want to make something perfectly clear. This podcast is presented for educational and entertainment purposes only. It's not intended to be used as a substitute for professional advice. We're sharing with you our own personal insights and experiences, things that we have found to be helpful and healing on our journey. But we are not licensed therapists. If you need help, it's important to seek out a qualified professional. Remember, we believe we all do better when we heal together. See you soon.